Well, hi guys, and welcome to another Flight Deck 2 Sim tutorial. Today we're going to be doing a full flight from cold and dark to shutdown from Pisa in northwest Italy all the way to Ibiza, which is an island in the Mediterranean Ocean. So all the information about the routing we're doing you can find in the description. But it is my first full flight tutorial, so I'm going to be as detailed as I possible what we do during the setup and every single phase of the flight. So I'm using live weather. It's a bit of a dull day in Pisa. It's raining quite hard. First thing we do as crew, get into the flight deck, drop off our bags. Then pilot flying would start his preliminary cockpit inspection, the pilot monitoring. He'd be wearing his coat today, and he'd be doing the walk around, checking the exterior parts of the aircraft. So the first thing we need to do is provide some electrical power to the aircraft. And how do we do that? We turn on the battery. Now we have DC power. We need a source of AC power to get everything going. So that would typically be the GPU, which is connected to the aircraft. If that wasn't available, you then turn on the APU and use that. Next, we turn on the electric hydraulic pumps. So during the walk around, the pilot monitoring, we'll be able to see if there's any leaks. And then we work on through the other things. We check the flap lever, reach the up gauge, and then we do some other things, check the circuit breakers, etc. But I'll talk about it in a second. Then the first thing we'd actually do is move on to the fire panel. We do a fire test, so we move this to fault. We look for the fault and APU detector in op lights and master caution overheat detector. And then we do a fire test, which is the opposite direction. Verify that the fire warning bell illuminates, cancel it, and the light extinguishes. And we have all the lights illuminate on the warning, the overheat, and the wheel well fire warning. Then check the squibs on the bottle, check they have green lights both sides. And that's pretty much it. Then moving on to the overhead panel, we'd arm the emergency X lights. We turn the fasten belts on once refuelling has been complete, so we'll imagine the aircraft was refueled before we got there, so we can turn that on now. We check the 10 button to make sure that's okay. We then go through here, as I said, we've already checked the flap lever, and then we move on to the cargo fire test, so you simply hold down test. Straight away cancel that bell, make sure the lights illuminated both sides as well, and we want to have these lights illuminated extinguisher squib bottles forward and aft discharge too. Then moving to the rest of the ACP panel, we check all the lights are in the correct place, and then we move to the circuit breakers, check that all have the panel, that nothing's popped. Then we also have the fire extinguisher, we check that that's in the green gauge, which it is there, and then we move on to the upper overhead panel here. Here we do a Mac airspeed VMO MMO test. The stall warning test you have to wait a bit longer for because we need AC power for about 4 minutes. Check the flight recorder, make sure the light extinguishes, and we then turn on the IRS mode selector to nav. Verify the ECs are on, there's no warning lights up here either. And then also would then check the captain's circuit breakers to make sure they're okay. And that's it. That's pretty much the preliminary cockpit inspection complete. You then jump into your seat, you move the seat to correct position, move the rudder pedals as well. And the first thing you do is go to the oxygen panel, check the oxygen's there. So I'm a little unfamiliar with this system. On here it's an EROS mask. Basically you can test it, and you can test different modes like 100% emergency oxygen. We then conform a lights test. And then we check all the overhead lights that are illuminated. Down here we have some additional lights to check here as well. Make sure they flash, and the wheel well fire warning light won't illuminate it, but it would have done during the original fire test, as you would have checked, and then you can turn that off. Then you move on to your EFIS panel, so what you just basically put is the information you need. So we're going to use the VOR for the departure. We then set the QLH, the local QLH, which is 1005, that's now set, and then we set something called the MFRA. So I mentioned this in my takeoff. Oh, wrong bug there. I mentioned something in my takeoff tour about the MFRA. This is called the minimum flap retraction altitude. It's typically 1,000 feet above the aerodrome, and it's the altitude at which, in the event of an engine failure after takeoff, we climb to this altitude, then we accelerate when we reach it to retract the flaps. And I can tell you that the OPT app I use tells me the MFRA is 1,010 feet, which is pretty much 1,000 feet above aerodrome level. Once that is set, we continue looking round. The captain would check his nose wheel steering, set his lights accordingly. Moving on to the ACP panel, he'd set up any frequencies he'd need, check the panels too. And then he'd go to the FMC to set up the route. So, always on the FMC, we start on the first page here, which is ident. We check the model, the engine rating, which is 26,000 pounds for us in the current nav database. I think my one's about a month out of date now. I update it about every 3 months or so from the Navigraph website. It's about £2 or £3, so it's quite worth doing. Then we go to the POS init page. We put in our route information, which I'd already done beforehand, which is Pisa. and then we need to put the RS position. So we don't use the last position just in case the aircraft was moved whilst it was shut down by a tug, and we go to the POSREF page on page 2 and select one of the GPS coordinates, and we bring that up. Now when the RS is aligned, our position will be updated. Next we go to Pisa on the route page, and then we put in our destination, which is Ibiza, which I'll put the code in there, Lima Echo India Bravo, and then we do the rest of the setup. So we put all the routing information in as well. Oh, and I just completely forgot, we would put in our call sign. So we're going to be the flight deck to sim today, and we'll put that in the flight number. Important that you get that correct, because if you don't, basically ATC, when they see on radar, will have the incorrect call sign to your aircraft. So it's important to get that updated. Good, and then you put the routing information in. So I'm not going to bore you here, guys. Most of you can do that. So I'm going to put the routing in for my destination, and then you can meet me when I've completed putting the route information in. And there we go. All I've simply done whilst I was gone is put the waypoints in with the airways we're going to use for departure. Once that's done, just before we click activate, we go to the departure arrivals, click departures. So based on the weather today, and because I know Pisa, we're going to be departing off runway 04 right, and the current wind conditions, there we go, I'll bring it up here anyway, 108 at 8 knots. Okay, so 04 right for departure, and the actual SID we're going to be doing is a SPEZI 7 Alpha. So there we go, SPEZI 7 Alpha, and if you remember, that was our first waypoint when we put the route in there, so there shouldn't be any discontinuities. Then to our Ibiza, it's quite a strong southwesterly wind today. It's 240 at 25 knots, and that's straight down the runway for runway 24. So we select ILS. We also select the star we could expect, so we're going to be expecting a RIXOT 2 November, which is this one. And then you'd also put a transition. So a transition you wouldn't necessarily need to do, but I know we're going to be going via Bebes. Then we just step through, make sure there's no discontinuities, which there aren't, and then we activate it and we execute. Now I'll talk a little bit about later how we cross-check this in a multi-crew environment, but this is what you do pilot flying during the preliminary setup. Then go to init ref page, and then you put the estimated zero fuel weight, which you get off your flight plan. Now, the PMDG has got the beauty of actually having the correct zero fuel weight always programmed, so all we have to do is click it twice. Then you put the reserves, so off the flight plan today it says we need 2.2 tons. Now this is the amount of fuel it takes to do a go around from your destination, do the full missed approach, and then divert to an alternate airfield, and then land with 30 minutes of fuel remaining. So that's put in the FMC. That way if you get into that fuel, it will say using reserve fuel. Cost index we're going to use is 6, which is used by a major European operator. And the cruise level we're going to use today is flight level 370, which also got off the flight plan. Cruise wind you then put in there as well, which is off the OFP. So the cruise wind at flight level 372 today is 250 at 63. You then put the top of climb ISO deviation. So ISO deviation is the temperature from the standard, what we call international temperature. So standard ISO temperature and pressure on ground is 15 degrees and 1013, and then you put deviation from that at flight level 370, which is -5. Transition altitude you can get off the departure plate, which is you can find online at SPEZI 7 Alpha. This page we leave blank at the moment because we need to wait till the other crew member's back from his walk around to do the pre-flight performance check. And takeoff page we can put the estimated flap we're going to use as well, but we don't put in any speeds yet. Now this CG trim I'm familiar with. I know some aircraft, Boeing 737s, you can actually set the trim using the COG, but we don't have this option on our aircraft. We set the trim using a load sheet, which I'll talk about a bit later. Excellent, so once the FMC set up, we then do our panel scan. So ensure all the flight control spoiler and alternate switches are closed, turn on the yaw damper, we make sure that all the navigation display switches on auto or normal, we turn on the fuel pumps, so we don't need to turn the centre pumps on because there's no fuel there, and then we check the crossfeed valve and make sure it goes from bright to dim, and then bright to off. Cabin utility IFE galley power, we make sure that's on, and we actually leave it on as part of our checklist. The IDG generator switches, we confirm they're closed. The standby power lights are not illuminated. Verifying how the electrical panel set as we need it, then turn on all the window heats. Leave the probe heat at this moment stage. Verify how the electric and hydraulic pumps. I've just got the forward door open with the air stairs. Turn on the trim air. Turn the air conditioning backs to auto. Leave the isolation valve open. We set flight level 370, which is our cruise altitude, and the land altitude for our destination, which is Ibiza. This is very important. This is the pressurization mode selector. You make sure that's in auto. If it's in manual, you won't have the aircraft pressurizing automatically. Verify that we have the lights correct, and we select the right igniter for the first flight of the day for a reason which is not worth explaining at this moment. It's quite complicated. Good, so moving on to the MCP panel, we set up everything which we need for departure. So the SPEZI 7 Alpha initially, eventually has us going outbound on the radial from Pisa 279, which is what I've set there. The runway heading, which I've set 25 degrees angle of bank, and the the cleared flight level for departure. So ATC typically on this departure cleared to flight level 120, so I've set 121. The reason being we have to wait for the actual clearance to set the hard level. Took the order brake to RTO, reset the fuel figures so on the new flight we have accurate fuel readings. Moving down there, that is pretty much it. You've already set up the basics of the FMC. Check the hydraulics as well, which I forgot to mention. We want to have 2,800 or more and quantity of at least over 86%. And there we go, the IRSs have just finished aligning as well, so you can then set some things up on the EFIS panel like terrain and airports, what we have on by default as well. So we can set that now. And then, just missed airport, that was waypoints. I'm having a lot of finger trouble today, guys, apologies about that. There we go, and then we check the panel again to make sure it's all set, and that is pretty much the pre-flight flow. Okay. Excellent. Right, next thing we do, so the pilot monitoring would come back from the walk around, be shaking his coat because it'll be soaking wet today, and then you'd wait until he was ready doing his setup, so he'd adjust his seat, put up his things in the FMC, set the audio control panel, and then we do this check to make sure that everything is set up correctly. So first thing we do, we check the routing in the FMC using the flight plan, so we'd step through all the points, confirm the call sign, all the airways are correct, and then we'd verify that the distance equals that on the flight plan. So the distance to IB was 521 miles, a few miles difference is fine, and then we check the landing fuel as well, which is 3.6 tons, which is sufficient for the flight. Then you would execute the route, so activate, and I've already done it already, you would then execute. Then we do an instrument cross check, so we check the time, make sure we had UTC, check we had the MFRA set both sides, the QNH, do an altimetry cross check, and that the standby instruments are set. Then do a takeoff briefing, so we'd say today it's going to be a left-hand seat takeoff because it's a captain flying. Going to use flap 5 and it's NADP2. So I talked about my takeoff tutorial about noise abatement departure procedures. We'd be using NADP2 today, which means you engage the autopilot at 1,000 feet and then accelerate and retract the flaps. Then we do an emergency briefing where you basically explain what you do in the event of an engine failure and how we'd reject the takeoff. We do that on every single first sector of the day and then every first flight of the day. We then brief the taxi routing off the plate, so we'd route tell us where we're going to be going, and then we brief the SID, the standard instrument departure. So I have provided a link in the description to the SID, and basically would step through it in detail. So we go to plan page and then to legs on the FMC. Good. So you can see here it's a bit of a conditional waypoint. This is what it does look like roughly in the FMC. So the departure straight ahead to 3 miles, and then we make a left turn to be 3,000 feet or above. So sometimes in the FMC it doesn't load correctly. So you look on the plate, it does say 3,000 feet or above. So we modify that restriction as so. Okay, I don't know why, but that's an invalid entry. It should be able to accept it. I don't know why that's not done that. Basically, we'll just delete that altitude restraint. We then have the next point, which is track on 220. And what we do from 220, we intercept the 279 radial from Pisa VOR, and we go all the way outbound to SPEZI. So there we go. There's the intercept, and then it is a 279 radial outbound. And that's what we have to do when we get to SPEZI. We then do the route. And I've got the Pisa VOR tuned, and then also for backup, it's 279, which we can use in case of an FMC failure to use traditional navigation. And that's it. Oh yeah, one other thing, as I mentioned in my takeoff briefing, you would modify any of the departure to make sure that you could make ensure turns. So the initial turn, we're going to go conditionally waypoint 3 miles and then a left turn to intercept. We just want to bring the speed back to about 220 knots. We'll aid in the roll control, and we'll just put that in here at Marley, and then we can delete the speed restriction once the turn's complete. We'd also put the cleared flight level for the clearance, which is going to be 120 as a hard altitude in the FMC as well, which I'll put it in at SODRI, and then as soon as we're cleared above it, we can get rid of that restriction. And that's it. That's pretty much the checklist all complete. We would then do the before start checklist to ensure that the aircraft was all in the correct configuration. Excellent. So you'd eventually get to a point on the before start checklist where we were holding on the FMC CDU because we still need to do performance. So we get something called a load sheet from the dispatcher, and then we'd use that information to calculate performance for takeoff. So I'll bring up the FMC here. We'd verify the zero fuel weight and input it again. We'd do something like that. We'd verify that the gross weight matched what it said on the load sheet, give or take a 200 or 300 kilos, and then we execute. And then we go to the M1 limit page. So the aircraft always defaults to full 26,000 pounds of thrust now. That's great, good performance. So if we did that every single day, the EGT would be quite high, and the engines won't last for long, and it's also very noisy. So we always reduce the thrust as much as possible, but not so low to ensure that in the event of an engine failure at V1 we could still climb away safely, and it's absolutely fine to do that. Now guys, I know you don't have the luxury of the OPT app, which my company does, but I know there are some free software there. But basically on the app you input all the external conditions, so the wind, runway condition, the temperature, the QNH. Basically it will give you the thrust setting for 26k initially. Well, because it's we have no APU bleed available at the moment, this pressure is you have to subtract by 800 kilos. So what you'd also do at this point when you get the load sheet is start the APU, and I'll show you the difference of this thrust setting. So 26k it says we can take, but obviously we like to reduce it. We always take a fixed D rate first, so we select 22k, and then we can say that's 91.8 minus 700.7, so actual thrust setting is 91.1. So I know that might sound a bit confusing. As soon as I get the APU bleed on with the APU running, I'll explain what it is. Also, then we take assumed temperature reduction. So basically we're telling the engines it's a bit hotter than it is, and it reduces thrust on that setting. There are restrictions with regards to doing assumed reduction thrust. For example, in my operator, if the crosswind is more than 10 knots, we can only take a fixed D rate for the reduction. The OPT app is saying I can take an assumed temperature reduction of 45 degrees. So I put 45 slash, and there we go. It's reduced it now to 22k, assuming of 45, and that's absolutely fine. The OPT app confirms that we can take that performance. So what I want to show is when you get the APU running and turn on the APU bleed, this figure changes. See how it went from 86.0 and 86.8, turn it back on, there you go. So this figure changes based on load on the air conditioning packs. You can actually do something called a no engine bleeds takeoff. It's a bit like turning the air conditioning off on your car. You get a little bit more performance out of the engines if you needed it. So most takeoffs would actually have the air conditioning packs on. So that's why we have to subtract that figure if the APU bleed is off. Good. Next we then do the takeoff performance. So the OPT app, we confirm the speeds match, and they do. So we take speeds of 138, 139 and 142. So V1 is the rejected maximum reject takeoff speed. That's the speed at which we rotate. V2 is the best climb out speed in the event of an engine failure. And then we set V2 in the MCP window. And that is pretty much it. The aircraft is now ready for push and start. So you call for the appropriate checklist. So you call for the safety inspection and before start checklist to make sure that everything is in the correct place. And that's it. We're pretty much now ready for push and start. So also another thing which I mentioned, you get your ATC clearance at some point as well. So you call up, so say flight deck to sim, we're on stand 28 Pisa, we copy the information of the ATIS and do say the QNH, which is 1005, departure clearance to Ibiza. They say flight deck to sim, you're cleared to Ibiza on the SPEZI 7 alpha departure, climb flight level 120, which we set there. Squawk is in, let's just give us a generic one, 3110, and you read that back, and then you verify that you have 120 set twice in the FMC, which it has been, squawk as well, and that the SPEZI 7 alpha is in the departure page. And that's it. We're now ready for push and start. So for push and start, get everything ready, ensure the doors are closed, the cabin crew will give us cabin secure. If I can remember where and how to do that now, I think it's that one. Yeah, doors, closed door. There we go. And also we close the air stair. There we go. Excellent. And then before we do any checks, we verify that the air stairs is closed and the door was shut as well. So we go back to the captain's seat because that's what we're doing. And then we would request push and start. So flight deck to sim, we'd say on stand 8, request push and start, and hopefully say, yeah, push and start approved, and say face west or east or whatever direction. So we have a little flow to do during the checklist here. So what we do, go to the overhead panel, We used to turn off the A pumps. We don't actually have to do that because we've got a bypass installed. We turn off the air conditioning packs because we need the pressure to start the engine. Turn on the anti-collision light, and then we turn the transponder to out off. That way, if they had ground radar, they'll be able to see us moving. And then we do the before start checklist below line, so we'd see air conditioning packs off, isolation valve is all open. Verify the anti-collision light was on, we had the parking brake set, and the transponder is out off, and then we start the pushback clearance. Good, so now we are ready for push and start. We can release the parking brake, which is here. So I remember now, I think I have to remove the chocks if I remember rightly. So yes, ground connections. Yes, so yeah, before we move the ground power, we would verify the ground crew that we have the APU connected, which you can do, and then we can remove the wheel chocks. And then we get push and start clearance, and yes, you have been cleared to push and start, so you can release the parking brake, and then the captain would talk to the ground crew. We have been cleared to push start, parking brake speed set. Then to remove it, and then we can commence to push, and that's it. We could do that by pushing Shift P. Excellent, so now we've been cleared push and start, and we've done the checks below the line, we're pretty much all ready to go. So, how do we start the engine? So, very simply, we just move the start switch to ground. So, with clear right, start switch, engine number 2, we need to bring the engine display up as well. Clear any master cautions at the moment because they're associated with the motor turned off for the push. And then we check on the gauge here that we have N2 rotating, N1 rotation, oil pressure is increasing as well. We simply move the start lever to idle at 25% N2. We then need to check the spar valve goes from to dim to bright and then off, and then we monitor the EGT increase. So yeah, jet engine, guys, is basically just a big barbecue. We essentially introduce gas or fuel to an ignition source, the start switches, and then it fires, and then that spins the rotor blades. Good, so N2 56%, the start switch moves from from ground to off. And any problems will be notified by the ground crew during the start, so they saw anything that we didn't like. Good. And say starter cut out, monitor engine number 2, and we have this really nice sequence of 2, 4, 6, 3. So 2 for the N2, check 400 EGT approximately, N2 is about 60, and fuel flow is about 3. Well, I have no idea where we're going, guys, so I'm just going to end the pushback there, and then set the parking brake. So the ground crew would say pushback complete, set parking brake, and then the captain would ask them to disconnect the towbar bypass pin and advise when clear, starting engine number 1. We should do move that to on ground, so EC is started. And then we've got N2 rotation, N1 rotation. Verified that we have all pressure increasing as well. And then exactly the same engine number 2. We move the start lever to idle at 25%. Good. So there's 25%. Verify the spar valve goes from dim to bright and off. And then we're monitoring the engine start. So the pilot flying would keep their hand on the start lever through the entire start procedure in case you had to do an aborted engine start. For example, if you had a hung start or a hot start or any other condition which would involve turning it off straight away. Good. So the tug would hopefully be away at that point, maybe forward, and then the dispatcher or the pushback crew, one of them would be on the headset still. And starter cutouts, monitor engine number 1, and then we say 1 is stable. And then tell the guy, yeah, we've had 2 good starts, we can disconnect the headset hand signal straight away, ahead with that bypass pin. We need to ensure that has in his hand. And that's it, he would disconnect, and then he would be there waving at us, telling us to do. And then we can start our before taxi flow. So every operator does this a bit differently. I'm just going to show you the way we do it. So we turn the generator on the engines. APU is no longer needed, so we can turn it, wrong way, turn it off, turn on the probe. If we need the engine and wing anti-ice, we would turn the start switches on first, but it's not required today. Air conditioning packs to auto, isolation valve to auto, APU bleed go off, start switches we move to continuous, and we then select the flaps, and then check the start levers, make sure we have the stab trim set. So I missed that earlier on in my flow. We set the stab trim when we get the load sheet for the performance, so we put the 0 fuel weight, so I forgot about that. And that's why we have checklists to make sure that we don't forget. So that was 6.2 units off the load sheet. We blank the lower DU, and then we check the flight controls. So how do we do that? Simply go 4 back, 4 forward, 4 right, centre, 4 left, centre. Then the captain would hold the tiller to make sure the nose wheel didn't move, and then he would say 4 right, neutral, 4 left, neutral. We then push recall, and before taxi checks. And that is pretty much it. Once the before taxi checklist is complete, you can obviously commence your taxi. So that's it, that's the first part of the tutorial complete from cold start to engine start. You can meet me in part 2, I'll provide a link in the description at the bottom, and if I can work out how to do it on the YouTube video, so you can watch part 2, which will be the taxi to top of climb. Once again, thanks for watching, and if you have any questions about the setup, please feel free to leave it in the comment section, and I'll see you again in a second.